feel like I very clearly see the US trajectory where it feels like it's like a standard late republic. Like it feels like it's a very boring, cut and dry late republic where there's like still ambition in the country, there's incredible value in the territory, and like things will kind of do a slow decline up until like the system turns over. And the nice thing with the Constitution, for all the problems with it, is that it makes it really easy to present a revolution as being legal, because you just, as long as you can just like pass an amendment, you can remake the entire thing, and it's perfectly within the balance. So it's like the US has like a nice revolutionary, a legalistic revolution mechanic.
Yeah,
That,
it's in your DNA, right?
totally.
And like the revolution is it's a virtue in post Enlightenment countries in a
Right.
different way than it is in older countries like England or Spain.
Well, like
That
most history is like that places don't just give up. Like if we're like kind of like zooming out to like 250 years, it's like the idea that kind of Europe would just kind of like stay just kind of like head in the sand, it's all going to be okay, as like unemployment goes up, and or like the America's like poaching the talent, and like then like there's like serious threats like kind of China and Turkey like looming right over the border.
Mhm.
Like it just feels like at some point like it's more likely that all of Europe gets conquered by Russia than it's able to just like, I just don't see how it's stable to
I
be
don't,
this.
I don't think it's gonna happen like it did in the last century. Like countries do not conquer each other like that anymore. You're not going to see armor divisions, running over the Vistula River or anything like that.
Why though? Like a weird 50-year period, and like all of human history, like up until the last like 70 years, is conquest and taxation. So like I don't know. I'm just like very dubious about the whole idea that like it's a new it's and in tech, every single time there's a new technology, it's a new economy. The rules don't apply, right? You don't actually need to have like profitable user acquisition, and then the whole
Mhm.
thing unfolds 5 years later. Like it's just like it's never a new economy, right? So my bias is kind of like it's never a new humanity. Like we kind of like conquering each other.
Yeah, I mean, uh, we do that, but the way it happens is very different. Like we had this in this summary in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. This was conventional warfare,
Yep.
but it was not in the scale that campaigns in the 1940s happened. It simply doesn't work that way anymore.
Wouldn't you have made the same argument in the 1920s though?
I don't think though. I don't think so because military technology hadn't changed that much.
I see.
Like
Well,
like between the end of the First World War and the beginning of the second one,
yep.
doctrine it had evolved, but not that much.
That's fair. Like what, but like, okay, but I guess like if we're looking at like conquest, like I mean, China feels like a good counterpoint because like China is like actively committing ethnic cleansing, replacing a native population in the Uyghur territories, and then also in Tibet with native Hans. And it'll be like 70-80% Han within like 15 years. And then just from just intermarriage, like those cultures go away. Like that's a very, like, it's fucked up. It's a very successful conquest. It's
Yeah,
and
but I don't think
by technology.
like I mean maybe the spirit of conquest is there, but
Yeah.
I I'm not sure uh, about it happening the way uh, we're being told it is happening. Like there is Uyghur concentration camps in Western China, probably. Like I haven't seen them, but I think it's reasonable to believe there are. But I don't think they are like you know like the kind of concentration camps you had
I agree.
in Poland in the 40s, right? From like German Nazi concentration camps in
Or the Americans, Japanese.
Hmm?
or the American
or
or the Japanese. I think that like that
exactly.
was, all Japanese were interned in the U.S. in our concentration camps, and then in the Chinese ones, it seems like it is everyone's allowed. Like Uyghurs are they're as soon as you get a traffic ticket is kind of my understanding,
Mhm.
then you're sent to it, but it's not everyone is forced in right away.
Yeah, and it's not. It's like they are truly re-education camps. Like I think they brainwash people more than anything. It's not like they. It's not an extermination program. It's more like an assimilation program.
That's interesting. So, because my understanding has been that they're kind of shipping in a lot of Han Chinese, and then they're kind of like they're taking especially the men kind of just like off so that they can't build wealth, that they can't get married, they can't have kids, and that it's like trying to shift the demographics to be like 70%, 80% of ethnic Han. Like, do you think that's the case?
I have no idea, really.
Okay.
Like I would be talking out of my ass, but
Yeah.
uh, I mean, these kind of things do happen, but they are more nuanced than it might seem. Like my family, my father he's from Poland,
Yep.
okay, and my ancestors come from what used to be Eastern Poland, that is now the Ukraine,
Hmm.
but they were ethnic Poles. So after World War II, Poland's border shifted because the USSR took a lot of what used to be Eastern Poland and turned it into the USSR, and they gave Poland some German lands from Eastern Germany that became Poland. So they moved all the German population that were living in Eastern Germany, they expelled them, and they repopulated those areas with Poles that were from, Polish territories that were now the USSR.
Like mutual.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, it was like mutual ethnic cleansing. Like the Ukrainians committed ethnic cleansing against the Poles in the new Ukrainian area, but then the Poles did the same against the Ukrainians. So just kind
Like,
of
and after all these ethnic, like during the war, there was a lot of violent ethnic cleansing, but after this, it was just
it was deep.
mass displacement of population. So my father grew up in a village that had Poles from all the Polish diaspora. Like there were Bulgarian Poles, Ukrainian Poles, Belarusian Poles, German Poles, Russian Poles, Lithuanian Poles, and they were all living in what used to be Eastern Germany. And you know, for a while, like they were given a house that
Mhm.
used to be a German house, and this was not right away. So for a few months, they were living with a German family that was had to leave their house.
Whoa. You lost the war.
Yeah, like you lose the war, so they bring a new family that they're going to live with you in your house for a while. And after a few months, they finally find accommodation for the Germans in Germany, so they're taken to East Germany, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, this is definitely awkward.
Say the least. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not exactly violent in the sense that these people who are living under the same roof had to find some accommodation.
No, I totally agree. I guess, yeah, I guess it's like, yeah, and that's I guess what I mean with like kind of I guess in the same as like the weaker stuff is like is that it the pro like there's been so many incidents. I mean, like after World War One, you have you have the kind of the Greeks and the Turks have a war, and part of the
Mhm.
settlement of the war is mutual ethnic cleansing. They're going to deport all of each other's nationals, even though there'd been Greeks living in Turkey and in Anatolia, not Turkey, Anatolia, going back literally thousands of years, and then there'd been Turks living in kind of some of the Greek cities, for hundreds of years, and that was violent, but it wasn't that violent. I think it was about the same violence level as kind of like the deportations you're talking about, nowhere near as violent as a partition of India, which was certainly ethnic cleansing. It was just kind
Yeah,
of this ethnic cleansing. So like I feel, but it's like, so why is it that none of those things resonate in like the consciousness? but it's like, because as soon as I feel like it's actually like the world opinion is actually entirely okay with brutal deportations and ethnic cleansing, and that's actually been like a very common thing over the past 100 years. But it's that the Nazis went the next step to actually murdering everyone, and then that turns into like this kind of like this massive cultural event as like the definition of evil. So it's like if you're kind of China, and you're looking at it. If you actually start murdering the Uyghurs,
Mhm.
then you have Schindler's List made. And the second Schindler's List is made, you're culturally fucked for like 50 years. Like the Germans, after that
Yeah,
movie's made, they're not going to recover from that.
yeah. Like, okay, yeah, I see your point, right? I understand now what you're trying, what you're saying. But this happened in the Balkans too in the 90s.
Much more violent. Yeah, that's closer on the spectrum, I feel like,
This is
to
it was super violent. Like I know veterans from that conflict, and they're and it was especially violent because it was not like, well, not especially violent, but especially gruesome or cruel because it was not like anonymous and aseptic, and like they were neighbors killing neighbors, and so it was not like these foreign guys who you don't know from 500 miles away that are coming into your house with uniforms and murdering you. It's like the neighbor from the next house who is a different religion, or from the different village that is a different.
you're starting with transgression. You're starting with like one of the worst taboo transgressions you can do, which is like neighbors are supposed to look out for each other. So if
Yeah.
like the opening fight, the opening move of the conflict is neighbors killing neighbors, like you've escalated so high from the beginning on what's acceptable, like you're not coming back.
Mhm. Like how can you forgive that?
You don't ever, like
Never.
ever. Hundreds of years, never.
Yeah. Especially in places that are so, like their identity is so well constructed through years and years and years and centuries of this kind of relations.
And I guess that's like that we look back at the past 100 years, and first off, we see that even though there's this idea that borders didn't aren't moving as much, like clearly they are. Like we can look at the Balkans as just like a population movements, like
Mhm.
movement, like displacements, ethnic cleansing, whatever the word, whatever the phrase is. It's like massive. What's going on, not in terms of border changes, but demographic changes and kind of like the Uyghur and the Tibetan areas, where it's like those are going to become like Han occupied territory probably for hundreds of years. Like both of those have been problem areas for the Chinese going back, I think like 1,000 years, and those were like major strategic threats. And so the Chinese government, they have the power right now. There's no threats in the neighborhood, and they have a long lens. So they are willing to have, mean tweets from Ted Cruz for any number of years if they're able to remove a strategic threat, and they're going to, and no one's going to do anything about it.